YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. In a world of coincidences, we get this. And of course, these coincidences that we constantly see are not really coincidences. So it wasn't a coincidence that Donald Trump was in Egypt for this ceasefire deal where all these world leaders got together to sign a treaty that would begin a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. Or should we just call them Hamas, or should we call them by their real name, which is the Mossad, being that Hamas is the creation of the Mossad, and pretty much what you see when it comes to these fictitious wars are governments murdering their own people and committing genocide against their own people. And a lot of the stuff that's obviously been going on over there is for the greater Israel expansion. And what you're going to see with that massive prison that they're building out that's going to be connected to this smart rebuilt Gaza Strip. So Donald Trump is being called Cyrus the Great. These are some of the billboards that are being featured and seen around the earth right now. He is being compared to King Cyrus. He is being compared to Alexander the Great. So I'm sure it was just a coincidence while Donald Trump is there signing this massive treaty, which he's getting all the credit for. While that's occurring, there was a concert that took place right in front of the pyramids. You may remember Anima. I've covered him in the past. Anima, who has his Genesis project, the end of Genesis. I'm sure that's not biblical at all. And of course, his concerts, if you want to call them that, are all about using massive amounts of frequencies on his audience while conditioning them into transhumanism. And I'm sure it's a coincidence, too, that if you go to Anima's Instagram account, instead of having a nice portrait of himself, he has a portrait of his eye. So he's at the pyramids. He's obsessed with eyeballs, right? Like all these celebrities, all failed optometrists who constantly love to hold a hand up over one of their eyes. And of course, we know the all-seeing eye of Lucifer that is on the back of the dollar bill features that one eye symbolism as well. And as I've mentioned in the past with Anima, again, transhumanism is the name of the game. He even has pictures of himself connected to the Internet of Bodies, kind of like what we saw in the movie The Matrix. Well, now we're seeing The Matrix come to life with everything that's happened since the pandemic, where we're actually seeing man and machine merged, and we're actually witnessing these big tech companies tell us that the future of the smartphone is a brain-computer interface, which means that it's inside of your body, and that by 2030, phones will be obsolete. Well, do you think that that means that we're going back to the old days of horse and buggy with all the control they have over everybody with their cell phones and technology? Well, of course not. What it means is they have to condition you into the next phase of man mixing with machine. So I'm going to play for you some of the stuff from his concert. I might have to remove the audio for copyright purposes, but that's not the point of me showing you this. What you need to pay attention to is all the blatant symbolism. The twin pillars, the capstone on the pyramid being lit up. And you'll notice some other things as well, including the gigantic demonic AI that is looking out over the crowd. So that's some transhumanism at its worst. I mean, this is energy harvesting, what these concerts really are. Of course, if you understand energy harvesting and what witches actually do and Satanists actually do, they harvest energy. And this right here was a ritual of the consecration of the old world into the new world. And that's exactly why Anima was there performing while Donald Trump and all these leaders got together to put on this show, pretending that they're signing a ceasefire. And again, Hamas is an expansion of Mossad. These militaries don't fight one another. You don't see them fighting each other on the battlefield. All you see is destruction of innocent human beings' lives in the name of war. Of course, they have to present it to you as if there's a war going on and not mass genocides being committed, because they don't want the people to rise up against these psychopaths who are responsible for all of it. So if you look at some of the stuff from those clips, there's a few things that need to be pointed out. Very clear that we saw the twin pillars, right? How deliberate was that? The two pillars. Of course, those are the pillars from Freemasonry. Yahin and Boaz. We always see these two pillars prominently in Freemasonry, whether it's artwork, Freemasonic artwork, or it's actual monuments that they have out in the open, or if you can actually get inside one of these Masonic lodges, you could see it for yourself. In addition to the black and white Masonic checkerboard floors, we always see these two pillars. And these two pillars, Yashin and Boaz, represent the entrance of King Solomon's temple. They're symbols of divine guidance and stability. What else did we see in that clip? Well, we, of course, like I said, saw the capstone on top of the pyramid lit up, right? That, again, is the all-seeing eye of Lucifer. That was deliberately lit up on purpose because it represents the completion, the connection to the divine, or for them, their connection with their god, Lucifer. And speaking of Lucifer, you may have noticed how blatantly obvious this was in the sky. The way they positioned the lighting behind those two pillars was to make the sigil of Lucifer, a symbol I've exposed many times in the past. You could clearly see it right behind the two pillars, right in front of the three pyramids. Now, you may have also noticed that some of the lighting was deliberately done next to those two pillars as well, which clearly represented the phoenix rising out of the ashes. You could see how it depicts two wings. The lights on the left and the right of the pillars depict two wings, and that's, again, the phoenix rising from the ashes. This is something that Anya uses all the time in his transhumanist performances. The phoenix rising, these men and women connected to machine, man and machine merging together as one. So this was clearly a massive ritual that was deliberately done, because remember, everything they do is deliberately done on certain days when certain people are there. You're not going to see Donald Trump in the front row at what a common person would look at this and say, what is this, an Illuminati concert? You're not going to see Donald Trump out in the open there. You're not going to see other world leaders out in the open there. But they were all in attendance. This was deliberately done as Donald Trump is now being hailed as the great peacemaker, as the modern day Cyrus the Great. Again, Cyrus in the Bible was renowned for allowing the Jewish people to return from Babylonian exile and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. And that's who they're comparing him to. And of course, now we're hearing about peace. And what do we know the Bible tells us about peace? The Apostle Paul speaks of a time when people will say peace and security, but then comes sudden destruction upon them. So, biblically speaking, we can look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 1 through 3. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. When they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. So this whole performance by Anya is obviously symbolizing the new world. And again, the new world order that is coming. Man and machine. His concerts are nothing more than massive transhumanist rituals. That's what they are. Conditioning of the audience, using frequencies on the audience to condition them without them even realizing what they're going to be accepting in the future. I don't know who would go to a concert like this and say, oh, wow, that's really great. There's this massive demonic thing with a red eye creeping out behind the stage, glaring at me, but it doesn't look like it wants to party. It looks like it wants my soul. Well, better have another cigarette and another beer and pretend like nothing's happening. But these are signs of the end times, ladies and gentlemen. It is happening all around us. And again, the more we see this massive push with technology, brain-computer interfaces, the Neuralink, this technocracy that they want to build out, the more closer we're getting to the mark of the beast. And things like the digital ID tie directly into that. Because again, remember, you will not be able to buy or sell without the mark. Think about what the world looked like during COVID, where they forced everybody to do everything online, to run and depend on the internet for food and water. People were getting their groceries ordered online and delivered to their door. They'd have to go and pick it up outside of the store. People were forced to speak to their relatives on their phone, doing video FaceTimes. All this stuff connected through the internet, and the digital ID will tie into heavily with that. And that's part of the reason I believe that they're bringing a lot of us back onto YouTube, isn't so that we could help inform you. They're obviously, the AI is going to be studying me, studying other people out there who have exposed this for a long period of time. They're going to be data harvesting. They are going to be studying what we're talking about because they want to know, what do we know? What do we see coming? How are we warning people about it? And people ask me all the time, they say, well, what in the world can we do to stop it? You're going to have to make a choice at some point in time. You're going to have to pull back from the technology. That's all there is to it. And they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that you don't think that way. That you say, well, I got to live with my tech. I can't go back to living, like a Little House on the Prairie here. But the reality is that we all should be living that way. Because part of the problem in the world today is that everybody's dependent on technology. You get all your information online. Whenever you have a question, you ask the Google machine or you ask AI now for the answers because nobody has any knowledge on their own. Nobody has books anymore. Everybody's dependent on the internet for everything, and they've made it that way. That's why they're pushing for the digital ID now. And that was what the entire push during COVID was really for. Yes, it was about mixing man and machine. We know about the nanotechnology that they got inside of people's bodies. We know that they're dumping it on us from the sky every day with things like smart dust. But what we need to pay attention to now is how are they going to condition people into accepting a digital ID when the government comes out and says, look, you can't have a job without a digital ID. Though most of you probably don't know because most of you think I've been gone for a couple of years, but I've been talking about this pivot from COVID to the immigration psyop. The whole purpose, and the whole reason you don't hear anything about variants anymore is because the real actual data that they got showed that not a lot of people were getting the COVID shots, especially after the first round of them when they were being told that there's new variants and they were being told that they needed to boost. So what happened? They said, look, we need a digital ID, and these people are not buying it for COVID. They're not buying it with social distancing and contact tracing. We need another story. And they brought in the immigration side. Suddenly, every single country, with the way we have technology now, every country in the world was suddenly having an immigration crisis, right? Fox News every day showing you people flooding across the border. Then you find out, wait, the same thing's happening in the UK, but they're coming in on boats, huh? Same thing's happening here. Well, how convenient. And now all these world leaders get together at the World Economic Forum and the UN, and they're saying the same thing they were saying in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, is that we need some type of digital passport so that they can track and monitor a virus. But then nobody fell for the whole virus. And they realized what they were putting in their body was the actual virus. So they said, well, how in the world are we going to get these people to get digital IDs where we could censor them online and we could federally prosecute people for what they say and what they type and what they search? We're going to have to figure out another way. Well, let's get everybody to hate illegal immigrants because we'll create stories saying that people are crossing the border. We'll show them the border every day on Fox and how nobody suddenly is doing their job and protecting the borders. And then we'll put stories out there about how illegal immigrants are peddling fentanyl and going to college campuses and going after women and girls. And everybody will say, we got to stop this. Then we'll say stuff about how voting machines and all this stuff with the votes isn't fair. They're not actually tracking the voting because they don't have IDs. These people are voting without an ID. Well, there's your solution, digital ID, because that's how they work. Problem, reaction, solution. So this technocrat is being built out. And you could see this ritual from Anima out in Egypt while Donald Trump is there signing a peace treaty. This was clearly a ritual that was being performed that is setting up for the next wave. The end of Genesis. Quantum Genesis is the name of his performance that he put on. We're moving into the next era here. And this new world that they speak of runs on man and machine merging as one. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.